And welcome to the special coverage of the 2014 budget address by Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan. I'm Guguletu Mfupi. Well, let's speak to a representative of the private sector, in keeping with Edward, who is the Chief Executive of Alexander Forbes. Edward, from your perspective, or rather, excuse me, let's rather go to Adam, a perfect company to cross to, because Adam Ebrahim, he's the Chief Executive of Oasis Asset Management. You're an investment firm. When it comes to these infrastructure projects, are you willing to put money on it, or rather, maybe not, but participate in the infrastructure development programs in the country?
There are three things. Firstly, the government is spending significantly on infrastructure, and the issue really is the private sector is not spending as much on infrastructure, and that is a big problem. Secondly, the private sector construction and engineering firms are not delivering to the extent that they should deliver. They're underperforming very materially. So the big construction and engineering firms, that's our bottleneck, not government. And the problem is we need to get the private sector to stop talking about government and get on with the act of delivering on their mandate to create profitability and create employment and to create growth in South Africa. So the issues are that we have the rolling stock, we've got the capacity at the ports, but we cannot deliver the product, not because there's no rolling stock, there's no transport, Transnet are doing their job, but the mines and the manufacturing companies are not doing theirs. So as shareholders, we really need to put pressure on companies to improve their performance. And secondly, once companies improve their performance, we're very happy to follow rights issues, bond issues, and specific infrastructure issues. So in South Africa, it's not a case of a lack of opportunities, it's a case of the private sector rather than the public sector not delivering.
Many people would argue that the private sector is not performing because of the labor issues and the strife that they're facing. Are those possible excuses?
I think a lot of the issues at the labor front in the workplace, again, has to go back to the private sector. We haven't taken responsibility for our workforce to ensure they have appropriate living standards, appropriate cash to go home with. And so over the last 10, 15 years, we've introduced micro-lending, we've introduced credit retailers, we've credit insurance, we've introduced funeral insurance. All of this has been taken off people's monthly pay. We should take all of that out of the system and get a more streamlined way of providing funeral benefits. People don't need credit life. In South Africa, credit life is most probably 10 to 20 times overpriced. So you could actually buy the big life companies, and the big insurance companies are actually creating an environment where they're overcharging, they're mis-selling, and there's a concept called treating your client fairly. And if that is properly introduced in South Africa, you'll find that the workplace will start improving. We must produce homes and water and services to our people where we have mines. That will ensure the workplace is actually an effective place. It's not only about wages, and it's not only about blaming the workers for going on strike. People need a good quality of life and a good workplace to live in, and an effective, productive capacity. Then they'll work. Nobody wants to be away from work. So we actually put pressure through our corporate actions to ensure that companies provide housing where they need to, where they take these garnishee orders out of the system. So we are a very proactive manager and investor. We believe in the long-term future of South Africa, and the long-term future of South Africa is not to criticize, but to get into action and get business, government, and labor to work for the long-term future of this beautiful, impeccable, fantastic country we live in.
Well, Adam, you have a very nice optimistic view about our future in South Africa. Adam, you with Oasis Asset Management, do you share Christo's sentiments that big business really needs to get itself in order and take advantage of the opportunities presented?
Sure. I think firstly, if you look at two things, with the rand, more than 10 rand to the dollar, most South African businesses should be very, very competitive, ignoring all these incentives. So if we don't have plans, and we haven't had plans for a competitive company and currency, then I don't think we're going to be ready to take advantage of all of these incentives. So I think companies need to be a bit more aggressive in being export focused, being globally focused, and we'll talk about Africa in a minute. Secondly, South Africa needs to ensure that it ensures that imports coming into the country has the right tariffs, has the right protection. There's so much money coming, goods coming into the country that is absolutely coming tax-free, VAT-free, and that's hurting our local economy. And what we need to do is we need to sort out our borders, and the Minister spoke about that today. And if we do those two things together with the economic zones, then we will have the infrastructure and the environment to get our growth rate up to the 5% that we need. If you then talk about Africa, the Minister has put in a lot of incentives to continue investing in Africa, the HoldCo. And what we really need to do is, as South Africans, the Minister indicated that I think it's 29% or 23% of our exports are now going to Africa. 12% of our dividends are coming from Africa. South Africa should be the service and export hub of Africa. We should be the connector of Africa to the world, and we as South Africans should become more Africa focused, and that will increase not only our growth rate, but the growth rate of the African continent, which is expected to grow by 6% per annum. And if we can tag along with that growth rate, our economy, we have a competitive advantage relative to everybody else in the world to take advantage and deliver that growth for the African people, 6% growth, and make sure that we have employment, stability, and reduce poverty, and that will be a great place for us to live.